Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is June the 24th. I see some of you out there in the chat in the mornings. I see some of you out there giving me a hard time, trying to say Seraphin time is a little bit delayed. Let me just tell you a little bit about Seraphin time today. I'm pretty excited about a couple things. Number one, for the first time in my life, at least that I can remember, we legitimately have people looking to run the biggest city in America, the marquee place that if you were outside of the United States and you said, what is the quintessential American city? You wouldn't know, you wouldn't be right, obviously, but they would say New York City. Funny little story. I had some folks that were Indian immigrants going to medical school in Texas. I one time met them with a buddy of mine who graduated from med school, and they were all going through the residency together. And I sat down with them and I said, you know, where are some places you visited in America? And they said, well, we went to New York City, and they went to Miami, and maybe they went to Chicago. And I said, well, have you been to Texas City? And they said, no. And I said, well, what New York City is to New York, Texas City is to Texas. You guys really ought to go check it out. And so they did. I got a phone call later from my buddy, found out that these folks went to Texas City, which is essentially just one big oil refinery. It's not really a city at all. It's kind of one of the, it was kind of a gross joke. I didn't realize they were actually going to go there. I kind of hoped they would, and they did. So that's kind of fun. But New York City is going to try communism, socialism, legit socialism, government ownership of not just the means of production, but distribution. They're going to try to do 1980s, 70s grocery stores like the USSR had. It's pretty cool to look at it. It's pretty fun to do a little reflect that 100 years ago in this country, in the 1920s, there was a push for that kind of thing too. Organized labor. What if we could just nationalize the means of production? What if we let the government take over? So New York City is in a real tough spot because they've done ranked choice voting, and I'm going to do a little bit of time on it. I am by no means a New York City policy expert, but I am fascinated with New York City in a way that you might be fascinated with something that you hate, because I really don't like New York. I've never liked it. If you're from New York, this is your last probably wake up call, because your options for mayor of the city of New York are so bad, so stupid. You're on the 100-year cycle, and you guys are at the forefront, the leading edge of the wave of retardation when the options that are in front of you are in front of you. You have your former failed governor running. You've got that guy that was crying outside of an ICE raid that sounded like a little whiny girl who got in handcuffs because he was trying to help Eduardo. And then you got this Muslim dude who wants to have city-run grocery stores. That sounds like a brilliant idea. Just absolutely fantastic. So that's what's coming up next. Let's get started with somebody who is not a freaking commie, socialist, junk bag. Here we go. Let's talk about my friends over at Blackout Coffee. I had plenty of it this morning. It didn't even feel as strong as it should. Maybe it's me. Blackout Coffee, folks, you can go to blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Not only do we run fresh ground up beans every morning here in the Seraphin House French press, but we also have the option for their freeze-dried instant coffee, which is actually quite good as well. You never know when you might just need to throw not a whole pot on, but just a single cup to get you through the rest of your afternoon. We've been telling you about Blackout Coffee for several months now. If you haven't tried it, we're going to break it down once again. It's just not another coffee company. They come in a black and white, kind of like the way that you want your mornings to start off. Just give me the facts and the details. It's about hardworking Americans. They have values like grit, putting it together. They built themselves up from a small warehouse, or a small garage rather. Not grocery store. I got that on the brain. They got a small garage into massive warehouse, roasting all their beans, as you guys could probably see on the screen if you're watching us. They now have over 30 hardworking Americans employed, with no corporate nonsense, just damn good cup of coffee. People who actually care about putting out a good product. When you open up the bag, you know, that smell, it smells like it's about to be alertness entering your bloodstream. Blackout Coffee is not just another great cup of coffee. They're also supporting the American dream. They built the company the right way. No shortcuts, no woke nonsense, no weak beans. They do not work against your political values, which is nice. They actually have solid work ethic and they're making something quality. If you want to make the switch to Blackout, go to blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. My name, the promo code KYLE will save you 20% on your first order. Figure out what you like, figure out how much you want and how fast it goes. And then for those of you that are out there drinking that flavored coffee, let me know what's going on with that. I think you guys might be the reason why there's communists on the ballot in New York City. I'm giving you a hard time. Drink real coffee, drink American coffee, drink Blackout Coffee, not commie stuff. Blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Don't drink weak coffee. Start your day off the right way. Let's get started off this show. Here we go. All right. Okay, so I got a handful of little stories that we're going to get into. We're going to work our way up to the main event, to the main course, which I think is quite fun. Obviously, there's some stuff going on globally that we should probably be talking about. There's some interest in what's happening with the ceasefire. Yesterday, I wanted to sit it out. I didn't want to weigh in on it. The Trump-Iran thing, there was other things that were more interesting to me. And I got another story from yesterday that actually popped up, and we've almost, like, the news cycle moves so quickly that we forget the crazy stuff that's happening for some of you that is big stuff locally. So let's do that real quick. This story came out from, I think it's NBC. Is that what's going on here? It's an NBC story talking about, no, this is CNN. This is the most trusted name in news. We've got a fun little CNN moment for you in a minute. The suspect in the Minnesota lawmaker attacks was a quote-unquote prepper. They're doing small work to sort of reinforce that this guy was like a right-wing loony. Again, everything about this story, the more stuff they throw out there into the news cycle, the weirder and dumber it sounds. He apparently had a quote-unquote bailout plan. That's not what we call that, is it, folks? For those of us that know how to prepare for things. We don't have bailout plans. We have bug-out plans. What is a bailout plan, you wonder, for his wife? Anyhow, again, more just like people who are trying to weigh in on something that doesn't quite work. This is the story of this guy, Lance Bolter, if I'm saying that correctly, Boelter, Bolter. The man is charged in the killings of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband. He was described as a prepper and at some point gave his wife a quote-unquote bailout plan in case of exigent circumstances. According to the FBI agent who's investigating the case, the term prepper generally refers to someone who stockpiles materials and makes plans to survive some future disaster or doomsday event or government elected official assassination event. Is that a thing? Newly unsealed affidavits uncovered by CNN affiliate WCCO. I didn't know they had local affiliates. How about that? The FBI agent Terry Getz wrote that Bolter and his wife were preppers and that Bolter's established a bailout plan instructing his wife to go to her mother's home in Wisconsin. You know, here's the thing that I like most about people that are ready to run from the government. You know, the last place as a former FBI agent that I would ever go look for you is a family member's home. I would never once consider, law enforcement would never think to try to find you at a known associate or family member's house. That's like probably that is an ironclad plan there that this guy created, this prepper bailout plan, not bug out plan. The affidavit did not imply that Bolter's wife knew about her husband's alleged plans to attack lawmakers, and she hasn't been charged with any crime. But she did know how to run because they had a bailout plan. I'm just going to keep saying it because it sounds so stupid in my head. Last Saturday's shooting, Bolter's wife was pulled over by law enforcement in the morning just afterwards while traveling with her 4 children to visit friends northwest of the metro area. She consented to a search of their car. That is not something you would do if you were a smart prepper, is it? Not at all. The investigators found 2 handguns, passports for Bolter's wife and their children, and $10,000 in cash. Sounds like that bailout plan may not have actually been the move to go to mom's house anyway. I think that the passports kind of indicate you might be going north of that border and onward. Anyhow, And I don't know how long $10,000 cash would keep you on the run, but, it's better than nothing. It's probably more than most people can do. All of this stuff is weird. Everything about it. During an interview, the wife said that she received a group text message from Bolter in a thread with their kids. And he said, and again, we did an entire episode about this, Daddy went to war last night. I don't want to say any more because I don't want to implicate anybody. That's the text message from him to family members. And it was read by the federal agents who, I guess, got consent to search the phone, too, in addition to the house. It's hard to say where that came from. But the affidavit revealed that he withdrew all $2,200, and then he bought a Buick, an electric vehicle. You guys remember. Everything about the story is bizarre. It's all weird. It doesn't make any bit of sense. They found voluminous writings in his home and his car, but no clear manifesto has been uncovered. How many of you have voluminous writings about your political ideology? Outside of our archivist, Rose, who keeps track of all the things that go on in the show, which is really nice. Good morning, Rose. We see you out there. Outside of Rose keeping track on spreadsheets of all the things, do you have voluminous writings about your thoughts and your musings and your ideology? It's one thing to have it on a social media account. It's maybe another if you have like a blog or a political sort of writing thing. I just don't know. I don't know where any of this makes any bit of sense. It's too strange. But they are trying to tie him to the right. That's the game. If they can do it. This right. The right that just continues to win so strongly. My buddies and I have been kind of trading this back and forth. This sort of like, this is what I voted for, but we do it in the alternating caps thing because it's just such a mixed bag. It sounds like Donald Trump's ideas have been mostly in line with what, the things that he said during the campaign or the things that he's still saying. That's great. And some of the people that are at the White House are also saying the same things. But man, the GOP really cannot get their act together. It's why the left continues to push forward. It's probably why we have a communist running in New York City right now, because that actually seems plausible. And there's enough division and weakness on the political right that the left, they do always get wins, even when they're not in charge. This is an article from NBC News. Not from CNN. Republican attempts to rein in federal judges have been stripped from Trump's big, beautiful bill. Probably the single biggest threat to any agenda that the political right wants to do are these activist judges, these federal judges that step up and just sort of like make their opinions and their emotions and their sensations on morality, like out of whole cloth. They just put that into case law, at least locally, and then they try to apply it nationally. That one thing that Republicans really could do right, and that honestly you should actually see happening on the political left too. Everybody should agree that when you put your executive in, they get to do executive things, that the judiciary, especially at the lowest possible level, the inferior courts as described by the Article 3 of the Constitution, should not be out there trying to stop the entire executive branch from moving forward with the agenda that they have that are, things within their purview. Yeah, Republicans can't get it together on that. The provision was aimed at curbing nationwide injunctions imposed by justices or judges who have blocked some of the most high-profile Trump administration policies. This is a problem for left and right. Even those on the left, including on the Supreme Court, have said this within the last 10 years. It's so obvious. It's so clear that this is a problem. Activist judges on either side. If you are a district judge, you should not be making nationwide injunctions. And I say that as someone who theoretically would have benefited from a nationwide injunction. It actually took us getting it into the Fifth Circuit and the en banc, first the circuit and then the en banc review, before it actually should have had any bearing. Unless you're specifically named in the suit, which is kind of the thing that we had for federal employees that were trying to stop the vaccine mandate, which we did stop, by the way. And then the Biden Justice Department and the Biden administration writ large actually withdrew that, knowing that they were going to get case law saying they couldn't do that thing. They wanted to hold on to it for later. Senate Democrats have forced the removal of a provision in the Republican sweeping domestic policy bill. I mean, I think the word sweeping right there is the big problem. It continues to be the problem. Do you guys remember when Matt Gaetz and others joined together to vacate the chair? We got rid of Kevin McCarthy and we got this Mike Johnson guy. And the idea was the original promise of putting a new speaker in was that we would get single issue bills that everybody had time to read and they would vote on them individually, that they would do the job of the legislature incrementally. For me, the idea that we have these folks that are supposed to be passing individual laws, individual funding, and what they do is they lump it all together. It's kind of like the same equivalent if your kid came down and you were like, okay, go do your math homework and then bring it to me to check. And then go do your whatever history homework and bring that essay down for me to check. And then go do your science worksheets and then bring that down for me to check. And you ask them to go do all those things. And instead what they did is they came down with all of the work, not just for that day, but like for the whole week. In this case, it's the whole year. And they bring it all to you. They go, here's all my work. Will you check it? And you're like, I've been waiting for months for this stuff. Why do you think they get away with it? Because they keep getting elected in. You keep voting in your incumbents, folks. And I keep seeing it. I see it on social media every single day. I will tell you a concrete example of your representative, and I only have that experience because I found myself in this weird national role over the last couple of years where the things that we've put out there in the world affect the entire country. And so they affect Josh Hawley in Missouri, and they affect, Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, and they affect Eli Crane in Arizona, and they affect Ted Cruz. They affect all of you everywhere in the country. If they're looking at religion, they being the FBI, they being the federal government and the intelligence apparatus, if they're looking into your First Amendment protected liberties, then that's a problem for all of us. So here we are exposing it, we being the suspendables, and every single representative that you guys have has failed. All of them. I got one call from Ron Johnson for a few moments, and I wasn't able to talk because I was in the middle of moving my house in with a pregnant wife and I had no income and I was trying to figure out where to go. That was right when we launched the new version of this podcast. Probably I would call it like 1.1 when we moved out of the trailer and we moved into a rental house. So that was part one. I got a call from Andy Biggs. We had a nice conversation. It's never been a follow-up on that. I requested to meet with people that I was physically in the area that I would have been a voting constituent had I stayed. We just didn't have an election during that time. But Eli Crane completely ignored us. Ted Cruz, we reached out directly. When I was in New Mexico, same thing. Never even met with the representative that I brought all those whistleblower complaints to, who got voted out. None of these people do the thing they got elected to do. I'm belaboring the word sweeping, but honest to God, sweeping domestic policy bills are the antithesis of what Republicans should be ever asking for. There is nothing conservative about throwing everything together and voting on it just because we need it. Because we waited too long, because we're not willing to do our jobs piecemeal as it's supposed to be done. Democrats are now challenging a broad range of the provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act for compliance with the Senate budget rules. Republicans are relying on the 60 vote hurdle instead of the 2/3. They're trying to get it done through reconciliation, which means that it can't add or subtract anything on the dollars. All this stuff is just ridiculous. All of this is nonsense. This is people hiding behind technicalities. I saw a video the other day of Jim Jordan trying to introduce it was simply a hearing. It was a House hearing where they wanted to play evidentiary video of parents that were outside of a school board meeting protesting, and they were being censored by the Biden administration. And there were objections to introducing the video into evidence, which, by the way, I don't want our members of the House and our members of the Senate conducting hearings anymore. I'm so sick of the damn hearings because they never result in anything. But they were literally willing to object and fight to even showing a video, God forbid, into the record. And Republicans could do nothing about it because they had violated the rules. They haven't given 24-hour notice because they created a new rule that there needed to be 24-hour notice. And then there's all this bickering about what the rules are. They're talking here, Democratic aides on the Senate Budget Committee confirmed that the Senate parliamentarian, this is all like the nerdiest stuff from high school where people were involved in in student council. Like they all grew up to be these people. The in-house referee who decides, her name is Elizabeth McDonough, ruled that the provision did not comply with the Byrd rule, which says that provisions must be directly related to taxes or spending. And so Senate Republicans added the provision in the wake of a flurry of federal court rulings that have screwed with Donald Trump's domestic agenda since he took office, including by blocking some of his most aggressive uses of executive power. Yeah, just defund some of these damn courts. Wouldn't that be the right thing? Like, at some point, you'd think that these people were just willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater and do what needs to be done. We just don't see the energy to actually rule ever. They don't take power and do anything with it, which is why I sort of don't really mind and why I actually stand with people like Tom Massie, who tend to be sort of irritated with how stupid it is. He seems to have seen it. He saw how dumb it was, and he just calls it out. He's like, this is all bad. This is a bad plan. There's been this ongoing feud over the last couple, let's call it a couple weeks, if you guys have been paying attention, between Thomas Massie and the Trump administration. He's been kind of a no man because he's been looking for a little bit more. I generally like Tom Massie. I think that he's smarter than most of the people that we ever see out there. He understands how things work. So you just have these ineffective policies because you've got people that are going to not be able to do their single job. If they came out there with single issues and just made people see a yay or a nay on it, would we at least understand a little bit more about it? The one thing that Trump is good at doing is the foreign policy end, where he has a lot more unilateral movement. This is something that came out. Again, I wanted to sit on it for a day or two just to see what would happen. Iran responded to the U.S. bunker buster bomb drops. We looked into those, by the way. They were about $500 million to develop the technology to drop those 30,000-pound bombs that can go in and penetrate downward and destroy hidden facilities underground. And they cost supposedly $3.5 million per bomb. So we dropped $50 million worth of ordnance just in that one little attack. And then there had to be a response. And the counter response is that the Trump administration said they got early notice through back channels. In other words, the Iranians called the Qataris and said, hey, we're going to be sending some missiles your way to an undisclosed location thing. And just be careful, because we don't want to hurt anything in Qatar. Of course, Qatar then tells the United States evacuates the areas. And so you had these sort of like not very effective counterstrikes. But I did want to kind of lean into this little feud that's been going on. I want you to see where it is. And not for the idea that the Trump administration and Donald Trump and the White House are correct, and not that Massie or people who are pushing against like the idea of going into war. And so you have this faction, whether it be like the Owen Schroyer types are upset and you've got them lobbying against it. You got the Hodge twins out there, which I watch this stuff on social media interactions. Then you've got the Trump loyalist types, and you've got the pro, Iran types that are saying the other things. It did create this little sort of like drama. All of this is still show business for ugly people. This is all still that theater we talked about yesterday. So here's Massie on CNN. He's looking very tan, by the way. Maybe that's just the coloring of the screen that this was captured on. But he's talking about how this is problematic. I'm going to show you a couple of clips that Donald Trump unilaterally making military actions. I'm not crazy about it. I don't think it's great, but it's not new. It's the same stuff that's been going on. What you found, though, is that Massie said the thing that Massie would always say, and the Democrats jumped in with him and said, this is an act of war, and you need a declaration of war, and you cannot have Congress do it. All of this stuff is just to get people really riled up, and none of it has any actions. There's no follow through. In the same way they put these huge sweeping domestic bills, knowing that at the end of the day, they're going to negotiate out anything that we care about, and we're just going to have stupidity. And we're going to end up spending trillions and trillions of more dollars, and it's going to be too much noise for any regular person who goes to work every day, puts on their pants, and like has to go earn a living is going to pay attention to. Maybe that's why it's really interesting to see what's going on in New York City, because that is so local that it actually might affect you. It feels like we don't have any real impact on the national thing. Here's some non-impactful, not constitutional, sort of just political talking points. And it's going to set up this sort of like MAGA versus America first idea, whatever the hell that means.
And the notion that this isn't an act of war, I find ludicrous. This is a hot war. There are two nations, Israel and Iran, trading volleys of missiles every night, every day. And we're co-belligerent now in this war.
I mean, the vice president went on to say that they needed to act now because there was a narrow window. And if they waited, it could have been too late. And they needed to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Do you not share that concern?
No, I don't share that concern. But I have another concern, and that is that 3 bombings to neutralize Iran may turn out to be the 2025 version of 2 weeks to slow the spread. This could turn into a protracted, prolonged engagement. And I'm here to represent the base of the MAGA party that got Trump elected. Most of us were tired of the wars in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and we were promised that we wouldn't be engaging in another one. Yet here we see this happening, and there's the president and the administration say, "Oh, we're done. We've had our little bombing, and now this is over." But what happens if this drags on between Israel and Tel Aviv gets pummeled by Iran? Is President Trump going to say we're going to sit by and not do anything in that instance? I'm leery of this given everything that's happened before.
He's not wrong to be leery of it. It did set up this sort of like MAGA versus MAGA thing. So here's the White House spokesperson. She's going to push back. She's going to call Thomas Massie a Democrat. That's not true either. By the way, all of them end up being kind of right and kind of wrong because there got to be a ceasefire, which was announced, and then both parties violated the ceasefire, which seemed to piss off Donald Trump. So we got some great Donald Trump audio out of that. Here's Carolyn Levitt. This is from the other day. Like I said, I sat this thing out to be able to see what it would look like, and I wanted to give you both sides of it. And both sides were partly wrong. And both sides are just kind of doing this thing where they're going out and they're saying things that are ideologically consistent. That's what Tom Massie thinks. That's what Tom Massie says. The fun thing is that Democrats see it and jump into his side. And so then you get this talking point coming out of the White House where you've now taken Tom Massie, who has legitimately libertarian sentiments, which is kind of where I sit. We don't all agree on everything, folks. I understand that. But the libertarian plus Christianity mindset is kind of where Kyle Seraphin sits politically. And so a lot of my mentality comes from that. I want to see things actually be functional. I want to see the smallest possible government. I want your mayor to have more power over what goes on in your life than the president. Part of the reason why I would never live in New York City. We're getting there, I promise you. Here's Carolyn Levitt just like lumping Massie in on top of Democrats, that's not honest either. That's just not an honest position.
We did make bipartisan calls. Thomas Massie and the Democrats, he should be a Democrat because he's more aligned with them than with the Republican Party. We're given notice. The White House made calls to congressional leadership. They were bipartisan calls. In fact, Hakeem Jeffries couldn't be reached. We tried him before the strike and he didn't pick up the phone, but he was briefed after, as well as Chuck Schumer was briefed prior to the strike. So this notion that CNN ran with at the White House did not give a heads up to Democrats is just completely false. In fact, both Senator Schumer's office and CNN had to retract that story last night because it was a blatant lie. And we showed them the timestamps from those phone calls. But I want to add something to Thomas Massie's false points. The White House was not obligated to call anyone because the president was acting within his legal authority under Article 2 of the Constitution as Commander-in-Chief of the President of the United States. We gave these calls as a courtesy, and the Democrats are lying about this because they can't talk about the truth of the success of that operation and the success of our United States military and the success of this president and this administration in doing something that past administrations, Democrats too, have only dreamed about.
No, actually, Democrats have done the same thing. George W. Bush did it and Obama did it. They all did the same thing. They all love doing this stuff. They all like going and acting unilaterally. She's correct that historically, over the last 25 plus years, we have seen presidents act unilaterally and declare that they can go and do strikes. And Obama was famous for doing it quite a bit. And I've got a little compilation of those. You've got people like Nancy Pelosi who used to defend it. Then they turn around when it's convenient and they complain about it. I actually think Tom Massie's probably pretty consistent. So he doesn't fit into the same category of people that wish-wash and say, you should be able to do war when my team is in power, but not when your team is in power. I don't think he's inconsistent there. I actually do wish that presidents would go in front of Congress and ask for declarations of war. And let me just put this out there into your minds. Consider this. Let's say the situation was reversed and Iran had the ability to project power into the United States. And they flew a stealth mission. By the way, I was talking to a Green Beret the other day, and he was like, can you imagine just the absolute devastating panic that happens that you didn't even know that there were aircraft in your airspace, and then suddenly one of your facilities just explodes, and then the aircraft that were there are not even there again. You still don't even know what dropped it on you. I mean, the American military's ability to do that is incredible. So that's devastating. I said it probably stings a little bit to find out that you didn't even know that you had your airspace penetrated and then you have your ground penetrated down as deep as they did. Okay, but let's consider this. Imagine Iran has the ability to penetrate the United States' NORAD. They're able to get through all of our radar coverage. We have absolutely no idea. And suddenly missile silos in Montana, America start exploding. and they are destroying our nuclear weapons underground. Imagine if that was the case. Would the United States be mad but not consider that a declaration of war? Would any of you think that a bombing spree that happens by a foreign nation in Wyoming, in Georgia, in Florida, at one of our bases, let's say, or in Montana, or any other place in America, fringe, populated or unpopulated, would any of you go like, well, that's just a strong message? Because that was the argument. We've sent a strong message. We're not in a hot war. Yeah, no. I think Tom Massie's correct. We are a co-belligerent at this point. You are, in fact, a group of people who have now dropped bombs on a sovereign nation without a declaration of war. That's problematic if you're an American and you want things to be the way it's always been. But we haven't had that in 20 or 30 years. So we're not really there anymore. Nostalgically, I wish that we would have declarations of war, that we would not just have these like armed conflicts and what they used to call the doctrine of low intensity conflicts, which means we don't actually put boots on the ground or we don't put traditional forces on the ground. And since we don't put traditional forces on the ground, it's not really a declaration of war. Bull. Imagine 300 Mexican soldiers creeping in and doing some sort of like, I don't know, foreign internal defense, and they were trying to defend the city of New York against U.S. governmental aggressions because they wanted to favor the regime change that was going on. They wanted to back up Mayor Adams, and Trump didn't like it. Can you fathom that? Several hundred foreign enemy fighters, and we would say that's not war? That's war. That's what it would look like. So let's just be consistent when we say these things. At the end of the day, the people that pay in war, it turns out, should just be the poor folks that actually sign up to do it. So if you guys want to support a company that actually knows that, we can go ahead and pivot over to our buddies over at Patriot Coolers. I got one on the desk right here. This is the, I think it's the 19-ounce coffee mug. I can't remember if it's 19 or 20. I think it's 19. It's got a handle on it. It works really well. It's spill-proof. It fits in all your cup holders. It'll keep your beverage hot or cold in the summer. That's a great option. They also back up our homes for the troops. They go and they help retrofit disabled American veterans' homes so that they have the ability to live more comfortably. They put hundreds of thousands of dollars of their profits back into that charity. We've seen the checks. It's a great, great option. So you're not just saying Patriot on the side of the mug that you decide to buy or on the cooler that you buy, but in fact, you are in fact being patriotic by looking after the people who do pay in our armed conflicts, and they do pay with their lives and their limbs very, very often. PatriotCoolers.com is the website. You can use my promo code Kyle. It saves you 10%. It's the same discount they'll give to those in the military, but you don't have to put in your ID or anything like that. KYLE saves you 10%. $50 or more, you're going to get free shipping. They're a great company. They do good stuff. They're out of Houston, Texas, and they get it. They understand what the cost is. If you guys want to go out and support a good company and a good cause and so on, check them out. We've been advertising with them for over 2 years now. I'm really grateful for their support, and I appreciate you guys supporting them too. Nobody ever gets their products and is like, you guys suck. Like, no, it's awesome. All right. So again, I want to lean into this. Okay. This was warlike material. Let me give you an example. Now, Democrats were asked those questions previously. How about Barack Obama? Because that's the most recent example of a guy who loved drone strikes but didn't declare war. You didn't hear Democrats crying about that. In fact, they defended it. Here's like 5 instances of Barack Obama doing the exact same thing that Trump did, unilaterally authorizing military action, which should require a declaration of war if you're that kind of person, if you think that's right, and I do, if you're a person of that principles. But they've been doing it. So like I said, it's been normalized. It's not like it's something out of the blue or that Donald Trump is uniquely bad.
Today, I authorized 2 operations in Iraq. Targeted airstrikes to protect our American personnel. Last night, on my orders, America's armed forces began strikes against ISIL targets in Syria. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Today, I authorized the armed forces of the United States to begin a limited military action in Libya. Because a nuclear Iran is a threat to our national security. They can take the diplomatic route, or they will have to face a United States president, me, who said we're not going to take any options off the table.
Okay, so there are plenty of examples of it. Here's Nancy Pelosi being asked about this. This is in 2011.
So, Madam Speaker, Madam Leader, you're saying that the president did not need authorization initially and still does not need any authorization from Congress on Libya?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, we're going to shut it right down. That's just the question. So this is not settled fact, but this is precedent and has been for quite a while. And so the only people you're going to see that are really, really consistent are those that don't want to see war at all and think that it's wrong and think that you should actually go out there and ask Congress for a declaration of war if you're going to consider things of wartime act. And that soft gray area where all the politics gets played is the same reason why we have these squishy big bills. It's because they're kind of getting away with this stuff. I hate it. I hate that. All right. ABC News reporting, is that ABC? No, CBS News reporting that Trump says Israel and Iran are violating the ceasefire that he announced, demands that Israel stop their bombing. That's not wrong. And so what does that look like? It looks like, first, the question of whether or not there was even a ceasefire at all. I've got a fun little dunk on CNN. This is quite amusing. This came from our friends over at the Vigilant Fox who keep an eye on this stuff. And this is Caitlin Collins doing live propaganda on CNN and then getting interrupted by Anderson Cooper to tell her that everything she just said is moot because they actually did get the word that there was, in fact, a ceasefire. And then the ceasefire was violated right afterwards, which Donald Trump was not happy about. So let's do the CNN thing because it's funny.
Now, we're hearing incredibly optimistic views coming out of the White House as far as how long this can hold and what this is going to look like. That obviously still remains to be seen on the implementation side of this and waiting to see if the firing does stop and if Iran and Israel do both agree to this. Because, you know, speaking of the fluidity of the situation, it was just 24 hours ago that President Trump himself was suggesting a regime change in Iran was a possibility. And obviously right before that, having the United States strike Iran. And so, yes, there have been a lot of phone calls going back and forth. In part, this has to do with Iran's limited response earlier where they fired on a U.S. base in Qatar, but there were no casualties. We know that they did give a heads up that they were going to be firing on U.S. bases without exactly specifying which ones. But that is the question here, is if the United States felt that it did not need to respond to the Iranian retaliation, did that create the space for this? That is what we've been hearing from administration officials. And so the question is whether or not this still holds for the next few hours.
Caitlin, I've just been given word that Iran, according to a diplomat who briefed CNN, Iran has agreed to the ceasefire. So this is significant. I just want to try to learn some more information as soon as we get it about that. But if that is the case, that's incredibly significant because that is, we were waiting. We had not heard from Iran. We had not heard from Israel. All we were going on so far has been the president's social media post, which was some 2 hours ago.
That is pretty funny. You've got a lady who has no special skill set other than she's been in quote unquote journalism for her whole life. And then you got another guy who used to be an MTV VJ, but he's, you know, son of a very, very wealthy family who's also sort of made himself into this sort of like pompous, arbiter of the truth in Anderson Cooper and interrupting like both of them. She basically said a bunch of things trying to shade against the Trump administration, only to find out that Anderson Cooper then was going to shut her down. Anyway, I found that to be very fun. I like to just watch when these guys are dismantling themselves in real time. But the story, for me, is yet another example of, I think, where Trump is most strong. He actually does have a pretty good instinct. Like you always hear about the art of the deal and the 5D chess and all this kind of stuff. It does take people actually playing by some rules. But Trump's idea that we're going to allow a counterstrike at a U.S. base in Qatar, that we're going to go and do what is legitimately, I think, if you believe my previous argument, an act of war, dropping tens of millions of dollars worth of ordnance. And we didn't even cover how much the Tomahawk cruise missiles cost, but I'm sure those things are also very, very spendy, if you will. He's done this before. We've heard people from his State Department talk about what is the appropriate response when you're dealing with a regime that sort of trades in strength. And the Iranian regime has to tell people, we are still strong. Yes, you know, these evil death to America clowns, they've done this thing to us. They've dropped bombs into the heart of our power plants and our nuclear, you know, enrichment facility. But we will strike back fast and we will strike back hard. Trump actually understands that. And he was like, what's the best way to de-escalate that? It's like giving your kid a pillow in the corner and letting them go punch the pillow as hard as they can because they're really mad at their sister. You can't hit your sister, but you can hit the pillow and get your aggression out. And so he allows them to pretend to be strong. And it's not the first time we've heard about this. We've heard about this from previous members of his State Department during the first administration, where they're like, okay, yeah, you give us the advance notice. We'll let you tire yourself out. You can tell all your people like, we've hurt the infidels in a place that they will never be able to recover. And then they don't ever play the story where Trump is like, we knew what you were doing and we let you blow some stuff up. Does that feel better? Do you feel good? Great. Thanks for letting us destroy the thing that we needed to destroy. That's I think, one of the stronger pieces of Trump's foreign policy and his understanding of people who only exist to project strength on their own population and giving them that plausible out. He doesn't have to disgrace them, and he still gets the win. And it costs us very little. What it does apparently also not solve, though, is the problem that these people hate each other, right? You've got a Muslim versus Jew situation. As I said the other day on social media, we're talking about two peoples that don't eat bacon. And this is not my fight. And so I will be very consistent that I do not side with Iran because I don't care what happens over there. But I'm also not someone who wants to see the support of Israel and us just writing a blank check and getting pulled into their conflicts, because this is a great opportunity for them to pull the United States in. I think Trump is pissed off about it too. And in a rare sort of moment where he drops an F-bomb on camera, yeah, he did. This is not AI. He's standing out there outside of Air Force Two before the Marines go and lift off in the helicopter. And he's being asked about this ceasefire. And it sounds like he's trying to get pinned into one corner or the other. And he's like, these idiots, they're both effed up. You know, they both don't know what the F they're doing. Good on him. I mean, that's a very human frustration I think you could have. I'm sure he's on short sleep, even though he's generally not a sleeper. He's got to be pissed because this could have been a huge win. And now it's kind of like more muddy water, which is exactly what the Middle East is.
That Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you have to respond to Iran?
I mean, that's it right there. I think he just nailed it. I think give him, some sort of like Nobel Prize, not for peace, but like maybe for politics or for the understanding of the social event. You got two countries that have been fighting so long they don't know what the F they're doing. I do like plain-spoken Trump more than maybe anything else. When he's like that, that's the best, because I think regular Americans are like, yeah, that's what's going on here. Maybe that's the same kind of guy that wants to get rid of people that don't belong in this country. Here's a little Supreme Court news that dropped yesterday. This is being lamented by NBC, and then we're going to get into the New York stuff because it's necessary to talk about them. The Supreme Court made it easier on Monday for the Trump administration. So, it's always wins and losses. It's always wins and losses. There's never 100% wins. We don't get all that. That's not the world we live in. It's a fallen world. The Trump administration is now easily able to deport convicted criminals to third countries. Think of that as not necessarily the countries they're from, but a third party waiting. So if they're from Venezuela and they're claiming, oh, if I go back to Venezuela, the government's going to put me in jail for all the crimes that I did there, or some sort of organized militia group is going to come after me, you can put them in El Salvador. Third countries. Third countries is a term that is often used as well in the intelligence world. So let's say I am working on American intelligence and I want to meet with someone who's in Chinese intelligence. We might meet in a third country and I'll go hang out in Spain, which is like semi-neutral to both of us, right? Third country. In an unsigned brief order that did not explain any reasoning, the court put a hold on the federal judge's ruling that said that those affected nationwide should have meaningful opportunity. That's a direct quote from the federal judge that was stopping this. I think this was in Massachusetts the other day, to bring claims that they would be at risk of torture or persecution or death if they went to the countries from which they were from, and that we were going to deport them to. As a result, the administration may try to quickly remove immigrants to third countries such as South Sudan. Wow. Here I was thinking it was all El Salvador. The affected immigrants can still attempt to bring individual claims. Of course, a woman named Trina Realmuto, the executive director of the National Immigration Litigation Alliance, who funds these things, you always wonder, says, quote, the ramifications of the Supreme Court's order will be horrifying. It strips away the critical due process protections that have been protected and protecting our class members from torture and death. Again, people in the United States crying for non-U.S. citizens, even though they're U.S. citizens who suffer far worse. All right. So that's the fun stuff. that I wanted to cover on. Let's do New York for about 10 minutes because I've got a couple of clips. New York is in a terrible situation right now, folks. You are dealing with the biggest stupidity where these are three of the front runners of the five or so candidates. I think there might be actually 6 candidates right now. The city of New York has instituted rank choice voting, which is how you get the worst person in the job, where everybody's second and third choice still gets points. And they actually rank 1 through 5, which means you can actually still win even though you were nobody's top choice and nobody's second top choice, most likely, if it's that contentious. They're dealing with former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's considered to be the front runner, although I've seen some polling that says this other guy this Mamdani may actually be the front runner. He says we're especially mindful that we're in the middle of a war right now. He told a crowd at a Juneteenth Bronx luncheon. Andrew Cuomo was removed from his job or had to resign because of sexual assault and sexual inappropriate contact allegations. That's all pretty wild. Cuomo said Donald Trump has declared a war on Democratic states and Democratic cities. He's declared a war on working families. He's declared a war on immigrants. He's declared a war on minorities. He's declared a war on New York City and New York State. I don't know if Donald Trump needs to do anything with any of you people because you've got the dumbest possible people attempting to run your cities. So let's do some of the worst kind of lowlights. This is Andrew Cuomo in 2021 talking about defund the police. And you guys will listen to what he says about those 3 words.
Different schools of thought. You want to say, oh, no, which do you think is the no-brainer? Is it a no-brainer to put more police? Or is it a no-brainer to say defund the police? You know, they're both legitimate schools of thought.
Those are both legitimate schools of thought. I really hate this guy's voice, by the way. I really don't like it at all. 2 legitimate schools of thought asking about that sort of thing. So there you go. And is that a dumb thing to say, do we think? Is that a dumb way to communicate? Talking about whether or not there is defund the police? We'll see. Let's do another quick little clip from him. In this one, we get a real reminder of that 2021 mentality, the COVID lockdowns of which New York was so excitedly behind. Here he is making apologies, saying, you know, New Yorkers all came together and did the right thing. And if they didn't do the right thing, of course, we just arrested them. That was what we did because we didn't actually care about the right thing.
Right on the brink of chaos for months, and no one gave up. No one gave up on each other. And there was a solidarity that was really beautiful at the end of the day, right? I'm asking people to do all these things that I could not possibly enforce. Close your business. You have no authority to tell me to close my business.
Owner has since been released after being arrested last night, but his attorney tells us that the restaurant staying open was a form of protest against the state COVID regulations. Nonetheless, though, the restaurant is closed to the public.
Wear a mask, social distance.
Well, David, cops say this whole thing started when they were trying to break up a group violating social distancing rules. They asked them to disperse. Most of them, they say, complied. Some of them did not, and that's when, from there, things spiraled out of control.
And they did it out of commitment to each other, which was really, and I hold on to that, because if we can do that, we can do anything.
That was put out by Curtis Sliwa, who's the only Republican running, which in and of itself is sort of ridiculous. I have this strange little family connection. My in-laws have a connection to his baby mama, which makes things very, very strange. But Sliwa is like the only person out there pushing that out, trying to remind New Yorkers that this guy that's running, he's got this past and he would love to whitewash it and say that everything is good to go and everything we did was out of love. That's always the way that you brand your authoritarian wannabe king status thing. Of course, this guy's behind the No Kings rally as well. I'm sure they love that. Here he was talking about defund the police while we're setting the record straight. That was kind of fun. That was like a real time, like, here's what he says, but here's what's reality from the news. This one is him on Bill Maher talking about, defunding the police and how smart that was. Remember, it's a legitimate school of thought.
They have to see that and they have to answer that. They have to answer voters who, on the way to the studio today, Bill, we're passing these tent cities for homeless people, and are we at the studio set? Is this a science fiction movie, right? People are living this. Yes, we want to help homeless, mentally ill people. They have civil rights. I get that. But they have human rights. And this is the way we treat mentally ill homeless people. You can sleep on the sidewalk and you can eat from the garbage. We have a real crime problem in this nation. Well, after George Floyd, everybody hates police. Yes, you need better police and better trained police. But defund the police were the 3 dumbest words ever uttered by the Democratic Party.
Okay, so it's actually really dumb. Now, that was him in 2024, mid like summer, about a year ago, where he was doing that on Bill Maher. So, you know, he's a man who can evolve. His mind can evolve into new ideas or whatever else. So you start wondering, how is it that these loonies get the furthest left wild animals who have zero background? Like, first of all, Cuomo is a very accomplished politician. He's a terrible politician as far as I'm concerned. He did a horrible job. People are in the chat over there talking about, here, I'll just throw you guys on the screen. You're talking about how many people he was responsible for killing through some of his policies. There was actually an OMG, an O'Keefe undercover video, and there's no way to substantiate this. But the claim was essentially that Cuomo was blackmailed into putting all of the old folks that had COVID into the old folks' homes that ended up killing off all the old folks in New York. That hits pretty close to home. We have family members and very close friends of ours who lost family members during all of this time. And if anybody remembers, it was incredibly contentious, whitewashing right over it, acting like none of this stuff ever happened. So the question is how do you end up with that chaos? And Cuomo went on a podcast. This is, I think, what is this? This is the FP. Is that the Free Press? He's doing a sit-down interview, and he talks about the Democratic primary process and what it does. And this is a real problem in the Republican world, too. What you get is the most active members of your base, the most rabid part of whatever the extreme left or the right is that show up in theory. The people who care most about politics, let's call them just nerdy people. The most nerdy people are going to go out there and decide what the platform is, and they decide who's going to stick around. Now, on the Republican side, what we see is that the incumbent almost always has this huge headwind because the establishment gets people that understand that the establishment's power comes from being established, and they have to go out there and they put their person in. So you don't even necessarily get people through the primary process. We had a guest on not long ago who explained that in Florida, but it actually is a nationwide issue. For Republicans, your best choice never makes it through the primary. And that might be the case for the Democrats, too. So here's Cuomo talking about what happens during that primary, who you have to kowtow to in order to stick around. And if you don't appease them, then you will lose them in the general as well. And so this has always been the problem for American politics in a two-party system. There are not really two single parties. We have like a spectrum on the right and a spectrum on the left. And the people in the middle basically have to decide, am I closer to the left or the right fringe when I want things done? And that means that they have to pick between their most excited issues. Hence, uniparty. They're all kind of just dancing in the same sort of square. The problem is, I think most Americans are relatively centrist. We don't have a centrist party that kind of just says, stop bothering me, stay out of my business, and stop reaching into my pocket for stuff that's like weird ideology. We had Nick Freitas on the other day. This is not a mistake. They didn't waste your money. They are using your money for their ideology. It just depends on who wins. And it turns out the left has been winning at this for at least 30 years in my experience. Republicans lose. They just lose more slowly when they have power. All right, here's Cuomo explaining the problem.
And that far left is so intense and so active and so strong, you better not get on the wrong side of them because they will threaten you, and they will threaten you in a primary, and they're very strong in a primary because you have that low turnout, and they are the activists. So it's a paralysis. Unless it's perfect, right? The perfect is the enemy of the good. Unless it's perfect, we're not going to do it. And we're going to side with the advocacy community opposition whenever we can. And we get absolutely nothing done. And you see a deterioration of conditions. And people say, why? And you're all Democrats. And I went to Los Angeles, and all I saw were blue tarps everywhere, and homeless living under bridges, etc. And I'm afraid to walk down the street. And it's all Democrats who are in charge. And there's no one else to blame. It's you. and you want to point fingers internally, that does nothing for me. It's still you. And that's what you have to fix.
Yeah, Democrats are responsible for the bad policies, but they don't ever do that. They never take responsibility for it. They never say, well, like, look, we just have really shitty policies, and our shitty policies have predictable results because we don't understand how basic things work. And that leads us to the exciting title of today's show. I know we took a long time getting here, but why don't we just try communism? What if we just tried communism? Because we really haven't done that yet. If only we could just do it the right way. Communism, American style, where we all vote for it and then we take the rich people's money. And that is a legitimate option right now in New York City. This is pretty interesting. This is coming from the New York Post, which kind of like leans right, but they're pretty New Yorky conservatives, which means not conservative at all. They've put this out there. New Yorkers, get out and vote against the menace that is Zohran Mamdani. This guy had a video that popped up, and I've been kind of like loosely paying attention to him, and I knew that he had some Indian background, and I knew that he was kind of like a flashy face, but probably didn't have a lot of substance. He's an assemblyman, as I understand it. I kind of was just watching from the outside, and then I caught this video last night, and I was like, oh, baby, we got to do a whole show on this. We got to at least do a segment on this during the show, but we certainly are going to name it, because I love it when New Yorkers prove me the reason why I dislike New York. And that is because some of the worst ideas in America come out of there. So far, they have just abandoned all the principles of the 90s where they were like, hey, we could do a live and let live thing. We could have like, maybe we just don't have too much crime. If America is Gotham, we have two options. We can act like Batman and clean the streets up, or we could just see what happens and see if people get gunned down in the back alley. And they were like, the gun down in the back alley option is the best for us. When voters go to the polls on Tuesday, they have to pick a Democratic nominee for the next mayor. Again, this is like a ranked primary system. And they face, this is great, they face a truly awful range of candidates. Yet, they have a duty to stop the worst of the worst, the cheap influencer, Zohran Mamdani, a baby-faced socialist anti-Semite who's never accomplished anything except his so-called buzzy campaign. Democrats must soundly reject him and leave him completely out of their top 5 picks in the ranked choice voting ballot. Then they go on and talk about why. That's a picture of him with AOC, by the way, so that's pretty fun. And I am going to do you a little favor. Look at AOC right there. I'm going to drop the headline for a second. AOC is getting a little soft. I don't know if she's got a baby on the way, but she has left her 20s and the sort of like thirsty pics, and she's moving into like mom bod range, which is not a horrible thing. I don't dislike that at all. This is like the kind of women that are in my demographic. I love moms. I think they're the best, but she doesn't seem like did she quietly get married? I don't even know if she got married to that redheaded guy with the weird feet. Did she marry him? Are they having a baby? What's going on here? Can we just agree? If you guys haven't seen it, tune in at like the 1 hour mark over on Spotify. It's KyleSerafinShow.com. Click on that. Go to the 1 hour mark. You can see this picture that I'm talking about on the screen. But there she is with this Mamdani guy. So this is the video that kicked off my excitement about this dude. Because I swear to God, what if we could just do communism? Let's just have the city of New York, which is amazingly successful at running everything else, run our grocery stores. I kid you not, that's this guy's pitch. Here we go.
Grocery prices are out of control. The cost of eggs and milk has skyrocketed. Some stores are even using dynamic pricing, jacking up the cost over the course of a day depending on what they can get away with. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm Zohran Mamdani, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
Okay. They won't have to pay property taxes because they're run by the city. That's going to work just fine. How are you going to pay for this plan that you have? How are you going to pay for the workers? Grocery stores run, apparently, I just saw some studies on it in New York City. They run on an average of like 1.6 to 2% profit margin on all their goods. It is so expensive to do business in New York City. It's impossible to like park. They have to block off city streets when they go do their unloads. It is the dumbest possible way for people to all live together. It's like they created this system. They stacked more and more people in. There's no infrastructure to bring in food. So they're constantly having stupid traffic, and they're blocking sidewalks, and they're opening them up, and they've got basements and all this other crazy stuff. How are you going to pay for all this? What if we just tax the rich? That's what they came up with. Tax the rich. would be the best way to do that. Think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. Here he is. He's going to just take from the 1%. You know, those dirty, evil 1%ers. How many of those people are going to stick around in New York City? Or how many are going to go move down next to Mar-a-Lago and live next to Trump?
Going to hospitals, how can you protect them?
Here's the thing. The Donald Trump administration will use the fact that they fund 7% of our city budget as leverage over us to try and give up whichever category of New Yorkers they are pursuing in that day. Ultimately, what we need to do is tell those same institutions we will provide them that funding, and we'll get that funding by taxing the 1% and the wealthiest corporations right here in New York State.
Thank you so much. Going to hospital.
Oh, you're just going to tax the really rich people and then just hope that they stay. Like, so what's that all about? Anyway, this guy apparently was a rapper. I went into his, sometimes you can go to Wikipedia and find fun stuff. His Wikipedia is truly amazing. It's really, really, really good. I'm super excited that I get to read some of this stuff to you because most of you probably don't know about this. And even if you live in New York, you probably didn't look into him because he's probably not your cup of tea. But you ought to know. His name is Zoran Kwame Madami. He was born in 1991, so he's 33 years old. He's an American politician from the state of New York. That's what it says. Except he's not from the state of New York. He's only been a U.S. citizen for like 7 years. He served as a member of the New York State Assembly, representing Queens since 2021. So he's been in politics for about 4 years now, maybe a little bit less. He's a member of the Democratic Party, and he's also a representative of the Democratic Socialists of America. That's fantastic stuff. Early life and education says he was born October 18th of 91 in Uganda to a family of Indian descent. So they're not even from Uganda. His parents, dad is a professor. He's an Indian Ugandan professor of colonialism and post-colonial studies at Columbia, and he's Muslim. Mom is an Indian American filmmaker of Punjabi descent. He's named after a revolutionary and the first prime minister of Ghana. When he was 5 years old, they left Uganda and they moved to Cape Town, South Africa. South Africa. There's a funny little video of him doing a South African accent, even though he moved away when he was 5. It's actually priceless. He just drops right into it. Like, no problem. This guy is a flippin' chameleon. He attended a private school while his father worked at the University of Cape Town. Then they moved to New York when he was 7. He graduated from the Bank Street School for Children, the Bronx High School of Science, and then went to a private liberal arts school in Maine, where he co-founded the Students for Justice in Palestine organization. And in 2014, he graduated with a bachelor's degree in Africana Studies. His work experience is almost none. He worked as a foreclosure prevention and housing counselor specialist for lower income people, meaning that was on the government dime as far as I can tell. He also produced a rap music and hip hop video thing, which he's a big fan of, and he collaborated with a Ugandan rapper. And then he entered politics because why not? And so he began as a volunteer on a campaign in 2015. Apparently, he's got enough money to not worry about that. In 2017, he worked on the campaign for a Palestinian Lutheran minister in the New York City Council. Worked on another socialist campaign in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, blah, 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 blah. Rest is history. This guy is wild. And again, I wonder if I have the free Palestine bit. He went out there and did a thing of low energy sort of, grassroots, getting people behind him. And I think I have a little quick video of that right now. Let me see here. Actually, let's just go to this one real quick. This is a video of them looking into who he was. I promised you a little bit of his rap. So here's a little bit of his rapping. This is the option. This is the stuff that he did in 2016, where he's praising terrorists. The Holy Land Five.
In 2017, Zoran Mamdani released a rap track that praised 5 convicted Hamas funders known as the Holy Land Five. Now he wants to run New York. Mamdani says, look him up. So we did. These 5 men were convicted of funneling over $12 million to Hamas, a U.S. designated terrorist organization responsible for the murder, rape, and kidnapping of civilians, including Americans. Mamdani sent his love to convicted Hamas funders. Let that sink in. Mamdani says, no wall will make it fall. That's an open door for criminals and chaos. Zoran Mamdani stands with convicted terrorist funders and wants open borders. This is New York City, not a sanctuary for terrorists.
All right, so there's that, and they're obviously running against him. This is him at a rally the other day doing the free Palestine nonsense in various different ways.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Eid Mubarak.
Oh, that's terrific stuff. Now, there's videos. If you watch people like Fleckus Talks, my wife was sharing me this video. I saw it the other day online as well, and I didn't really understand the context, but he was speaking apparently in Hindi, and he was out there explaining that he was going to give a bunch of free stuff to Indian people, so he's able to like very quickly chameleonize his way between them. Here he is crying about anti-Muslim threats, which you have to care about in New York, turning on the waterworks. It's just the ugliest thing in the world when people just give him death threats, even though he's basically nobody and he has no background and he came from nowhere and he's never really had real jobs.
I get messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. I get threats on my life. On the people that I love. And I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction. My focus has always been on making this a city that's affordable, on making this a city that every New Yorker sees themselves in. And it takes a toll. Because this is a city that every single person deserves to be in. It's a city that we all belong to. And the thing that's made me proudest in this campaign is that the strength of our movement is built on our ability to have built something across Jewish and Muslim New Yorkers, across New Yorkers of all faiths and all backgrounds and all boroughs. And anti-Semitism is such a real issue in the city. And it has been hard to see it weaponized by candidates who do not seem to have any sincere interest in tackling it.
They just don't have any sincere interest in trying to be not racist or anti-Muslim, Islamophobics, blah, 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 blah. So that's cool. Free Palestine or whatever. That's his jam. New York. You might only have one real, halfway decent answer. The other guy is Brad Lander, who's on the screen, who we played the other day, who was crying for Eduardo. He was out there trying to get arrested by ICE. And he did. And then he had Kathy Hochul, who had some sort of facial conniption situation going on, bad Botox. So that's it. Why are New York, at least Cuomo's not crying. I mean, he's horrible, but at least he's not crying on camera to try to get sympathies. Is that a thing that people want out there? New Yorkers used to just go trying to be tough badasses. That was always their claim. The joke used to be that when I was growing up, I was like, everything that New York thinks it is, Texas actually is. You know, New York thinks it's really big and bad and strong and tough. And then you got actual people in West Texas that are, pulling gas out of the ground and stuff and wrangling cattle. But anyway, we're living in a strange time. Why not communism? I remember some guy used to say, is it bad enough yet? And maybe New York is really looking to just get in on that bad enough yet. Maybe they'll be able to finally reach that low point where they have to go, where people are getting burned alive on the subway. Oh, they're already there. Maybe where there's people just sleeping on every street corner. Oh, they're already there. So maybe they're almost there. Maybe they just need communism to come in and really topple it. This is is the League of Shadows running this campaign? That's my question. My buddy and I used to always laugh that that Batman was wrong, that the League of Shadows actually had it right, and letting New York just topple under itself would have been sort of maybe the right move. In any case, you in the chat out there have many opinions about this, so I wanted to put that on the screen too. It's just it's such a silly time to see that. Who knew that we would live long enough to see the Cold War end in our time? And then we're like, hey, let's just give it 30 years. Maybe we could try that thing that we just toppled. That the people who are old enough to have seen the Soviet Union toppled, there are actually people who survived the Soviet Union, who came to America, that now live in New York, that are seeing New Yorkers potentially go and do Soviet Union stuff. Isn't that something? It's extra special. All right. And I'm going to end with something kind of dumb. And then I've got something about this. By the way, the city running your grocery stores is like the equivalent of shopping at the DMV. Outside of Kansas and a little one in Arizona, I don't know that anybody wants to go shopping at a DMV. The least motivated people in the world moving the slowest possible. If you guys have ever seen Zootopia, it's like flash, 100-yard dash stuff. Okay, this is the last thing. I just thought it was really funny yesterday, and I wanted to work it in somewhere. It's a barrier that women have never broken. Can Faith Kipyenong make mile history, no woman has ever run a mile in under 4 minutes. And so the mile world record holder, 3-time Olympic champion from Kenya, is going to attempt to be the first woman to run a mile in under 4 minutes. But I only have one question for the Democrats out there that are looking, and I know my chat already knows what the question is. The question is, what is a woman? How come some woman with a penis didn't just go out there and run it? Because I'm confident that there are some now currently dudes that might associate as a woman just to become the first woman to be able to break history, or maybe they just have a little bit of self-respect. This is a very silly lack of self-reflection article coming from NBC saying that under the right circumstances, a female could become the first woman to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And that circumstances, if it's not her, could just be someone with a penis that identifies as a woman might do the same thing. So there's that. Let's do a little palate cleanse before we do. If you're watching over on Rumble, if you're watching over on YouTube, will you please give us a like? And we really appreciate it. It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. If you're listening somewhere and you've never caught the live show and you've never seen the video go like that, check it out. This is the studio set that we broadcast from every day. YouTube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. Those are the local places. If you guys want to see us over on locals, you can do it at KyleSeraphin.com. Every day I post the show over there, but you can also go into the comments and I'll give you all the articles that we reference if you want to go read them for yourself. And many of you do. Fact check us. See if I messed it up. It's always possible. And then lastly, Spotify, it's KyleSeraphinShow.com. The easiest way to watch audio or video, and you can dance between them. You don't have to do anything special. You can even watch it right there on the website. You don't have to download the app. It's free for you if you like. And there should be, unless I find out otherwise, there should be a way to watch ad-free video. All right, let's do a palate cleanse of some kind. This has to do with the DMV. The stupidity of the DMV is unrivaled. You got to watch to the end of this clip to really catch what it is. A man who's upset about people stealing the registration stickers. Who looks for their registration stickers? Nobody, right up until you get pulled over. But who runs the registration sticker program? That's the real question. Maybe they should run your grocery stores.
There's no common sense. I got a ticket because the thieves in Los Angeles are stealing off of our license plates the little registration year sticker. Yes, and you don't know your sticker's missing. Because you don't go out to your car every morning and go, is my sticker still there? You don't know until you get a ticket. So I called the DMV. I said, hey, there's a mix-up. I got a ticket, but my car's registered. And she goes, sir, you need to prove to us that your car's registered. I said, I'm sorry. Am I talking to the DMV? Isn't that a little piece of information you should have? She goes, sir, it's policy. You need to send us a copy of your registration. I said, I don't even know where that is. She said, we'd be happy to send you a copy.
Tell me that's not real.
Send back to us. This is the shit world that I live in. I didn't even open up the envelope. I just wrote return to sender.
And there you have it. That could be you, New York, except it could be your grocery stores. Good luck with that. We're all praying for you. We hope you make an interesting choice. Even if it's not the right choice, it will be fun to cover it. So knock yourselves out there. Make sure you guys are paying attention to what's going on around you if you live in that area. And hopefully we've illuminated a little bit of your options and your choices. Just a bit, if nothing else, just for our own sort of amusement. That's it for the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Guys, stick around for the American Radicals podcast. If you're watching over on Rumble, we'll drop you right in over there. Yes, we will raid you, and you will see my friends Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. Garrett now going on just over 1,000 days without a paycheck. Nothing like winning over again. Again, mixed bag, this Trump administration. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for the next Kyle Seraphin Show.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.